Hello and welcome to MCM and the review of the Husqvarna Norden 901 adventure bike. So if you're not familiar with Husqvarna, they've changed hands a few times recently, Swedish motorcycle brand, and now they're under the ownership of Austrian bike brand KTM. They're sort of sister brand to KTM. And what that means is that KTM produce some new models and then using some of the existing platforms that KTM have, so engines, chassis, other basic bits of design, Husqvarna take those bikes, they modify them in different ways, make them suit different purposes and create whole new models. And that's exactly what they've done with the Norden 901. So the Norden 901 is based on the 890 platform, which was based on the 790 platform. And it basically sits between, somewhere between, and I hope Husky won't be offended if I say this, between the 890 and the 890R. So in terms of suspension travel, it's about halfway between the two, fit, finish, etc, etc. And that's the entire premise of the bike. And that means, because I said that sister vehicles, it shares the same 889cc parallel twin engine, which produces about, probably about 103 brake horsepower. I'm going to check that. 105, I was bloody close. And that means it delivers quite an exciting ride. I know there's some people out there who want big adventure bikes that do 150, 160 super bike levels of horsepower. Great, good for you. But personally I don't, and it delivers it really well. It's an exciting bike to ride. It's more than fast enough to get on with. It's more than fast enough to get you some speeding tickets if you really want to do it. But the way it delivers it is really nice as well. So there's a decent bit of torque at the bottom from the twin, and as it builds up, it revs really cleanly, quite quickly as well, with a pretty good throttle connection all the way through. It's a really exciting, dynamic bike to ride. It's a tiny bit abrupt at the bottom end if I was being really picky, but other than that, it's great. Really nice engine. One thing that's particularly good is the gearbox. The gearbox is slick, but to go with that, the quick shifter and the blipper are brilliant. Husky blippers have always somehow been that little bit better. I don't know if they just spend more time programming them or something. Most of them you have to have a completely closed throttle, whereas the Husky you can blip it on a part throttle, which I haven't really found anywhere else in any other bike, which is really, really impressive and just delivers a really quality feel. So as I said, the suspensions, there or thereabouts in the middle of an 890 and an 890R with its travel. It's about 220 millimeters of travel. What is a slight disappointment is that you get WP Apex forks rather than the Explore kit, which is on the 890. Although, I'm just going to say this, it's a disappointment in the spec alone. They're maybe a little bit soft when you're riding, although that could be quite nice, especially if you're new to off-road. It gives you a lot more feel than the 890, which is really, really stiff. But at no point when I was kind of riding along did I think, oh God, I wish these fork stanchions were a couple of millimeters bigger. It's just sort of a non-thing really, for me at least. But then again, I'm not Sam Sunderland, so maybe if you're an absolute hero, you could tell the difference. But for most people who aren't, the suspension delivers quite a nice, soft, good, progressive feel. My only sort of complaint with the suspension is that because it sits in the middle, it's neither one way nor the other. If you wanted to do just road work, it'd be nicer to have a lower bike because it is ultimately quite tall, particularly in the middle. If you wanted to do a lot of off-road work, it'd be nice to have something a bit stiffer and with a bit more travel. I don't think I bottomed it out, but there was a couple of times when we went over little sort of jump bits and it had a pretty hefty landing, and it definitely dives on the brakes and the front forks. But again, you sort of just learn to work around these things. Again, because it's an adventure bike, it has a fairly upright riding position. There's a couple of little changes. So the petrol tank's been slimmed in, for instance, over the 890, so it's lost about a litre. But the main thing it's gained is a big full fairing with some integrated fog lights and a big dash and all that kind of stuff. It's not quite as nice as it looked on the Concept, which had like that split dash, which used an iPhone. But it still works pretty well. All the kind of bits and pieces with the app and navigation stuff are exactly what you kind of expect. Again, pretty similar to their KTM. What was a surprise about the fairing though is that it didn't really seem to offer very much protection. I'm not very tall. I'm about 5'7" on a really good day. And I could feel quite a lot of wind buffeting on my shoulders and catching the peak of my helmet when we were doing motorway speeds, which was a bit disappointing if I'm being honest. If it's going to have a fairing like that, you want it to actually really achieve something. So it'd need to be taller, but it's not adjustable, it's just one piece. Whether or not bigger screens are going to come out in the future or available, I don't know. But if you're looking for something that's going to be a nice, comfortable road-going adventure bike that you can do long distances on, I think you'd be better served elsewhere. That said, one thing that is really good in the Comfort Way is the seat. Husqvarna say they spent a long time trying all sorts of different seat foams and thicknesses and God knows what with some sort of official bottom testers or whatever role that involves. And you can tell it pays off. At no point when I was sat there did I think, ugh, God, you know, my poor coccyx or anything like that. It was great. So one of the other things that's different as well is the tyres. So the Husky comes with Pirelli Rally STRs, which are a really, really nice tyre normally. They're really, really impressive. I've used them on loads of other adventure bikes. They're really capable off-road. They're great on-road. But for some reason, I didn't really get on with them on the Husky. I couldn't work out whether or not it was just that they've like fitted an inferior OE version, which is, you know, a well-known thing that people do, or whether or not it's just the way the suspension was set up or something. But it just didn't offer that same level of grip or confidence that I would expect from that tyre, which was a bit of a surprise. The other thing that's changed is the way the bike is set up in the position. And in particular, one of the things I really didn't like was that the handlebars on the Husky are very far forward. So it gets you right over the front wheel. Now off-road, and you know, that's quite a common thing on dirt bikes, and off-road that can work really well. But on-road and certain riding situations, it didn't feel quite right. It just felt like your weight was in the sort of the wrong place. Now there is adjustment there, there's about 30mm adjustment in the handlebars, but that's the stock position it comes in and you can only review it as you rode it. And I wasn't a fan of it. Whether or not it would be improved by moving it around, I can't say because we haven't tried it. But in its standard riding position, it didn't do a great deal for me. And I think that's what contributed to this twitchy front end feeling. It constantly felt like it was about to just snap out of your hands and you were about to lose it. And for that reason, I never felt fully comfortable on the bike the entire time I rode it. So again, coming from the same stable as KTM, it's got really similar electronics. It has the sort of adjustable traction control. If you put it in rally mode, you can change the slip as you're up and down as you go along, anywhere from 1 to 9. If I'm being honest, I think it's a bit of a gimmick. I don't really think there's times when I'm riding along thinking, oh, I wish I had more wheel slip. I'd rather it was just set in one good place, like pretty much everyone else does, and just be done with it. So to that end, I set mine at 4 on the 1 to 9 bar, 1 being the least, and just left it there, and it seemed to be pretty good for me. What was unbelievably frustrating was that the riding modes and your ABS and other bits are not connected. So that if you put it in off-road mode, rally mode, or you put it in off-road mode, it doesn't put it in off-road ABS mode. So you put it back in off-road ABS mode. Then you come to a road, you put it back in road mode. Oh, you've got to put it back in road ABS mode. Now, whether or not that's a prototype thing and it's going to change because these were early models on a launch, and I've not come across that to the best of my knowledge on any other kind of brand the way it's been set up. So yeah, I mean, there are ways you can change it. You can set favorites in the menu and then you can change it, but it's an extra couple of button presses that you just don't want to have to deal with. So what's the kind of overall takeaway? Lots of the parts of the bike are good and they're really nice. The engine, the chassis, the way it feels, the suspension. You know, if you're after a kind of soft, progressive, new to adventure style adventure bike, it does a pretty good job of that. I think it could definitely be improved, and that's almost where it struggles the most. By making it a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, the bike doesn't really define a particular position within the market. There's so many other really good middleweight adventure bikes out there, including the 890 and the 890R. But let's also you got the Tiger 900 GT, Tiger 900 Rally. You got the BMW F850 GS and GS Adventure. You know, there's sort of, it's almost limitless how many options there are in that in that sphere. And then if you want to go a little bit cheaper, you can get stuff like the Tenere 700. And at the price this is at, which is nearly £13,000, 12 whatever, it means that you're knocking on the doors of big venture bikes like 1250 GSs and stuff like that. So it kind of hasn't really found a place. It's not in and of itself a bad motorcycle, but there are better options out there for the money.